That's Clara Aerts from Belgium. Hi.
Hi. And this is Christoph Wiechert from the Netherlands, and together we are from the lowlands.
The flatlands.
The flatlands.
Nice to be in the Swiss country with Alps.
Yes, we need a variation of the heights and the depths.
But by the way, Clara.
Yes.
When you come in a situation of early childhood education, or it is a kindergarten, or how you enter that room, there are children, there are these educators, how you feel that it works well.
Now it becomes tricky. Let's see, what kind of early childhood setting would I be entering? I might not find anyone if it's in a room, because the setting might be somewhere else, in the forest or in the mountains. Probably I would know that I'm entering an early childhood setting because there are some sounds coming towards me. They might be vibrant, they might be silent, they might be going in all kinds of directions, and there will probably also some smells. There might be something cooking. It might be rice or dal or bread or soup, wherever we find ourselves in the world. Or it might be the smell of leaves when the setting is in a forest. Leaves after a rain has fallen onto them. You know, that specific smell. But how do I know if things go well? Well, I would say no matter where I find myself, wherever this early childhood setting is, the moment I enter their space, there is a special kind of time quality. It's like leaving the operational clock time from my life that is set in schedules and times by watches, and I'm entering a kind of a time sphere that has a quality of timelessness, a quality of flow, you could say. And how I would notice that I'm entering this timeless quality of flow is that the heartbeat of this life taking place with children and their educators is kind of a heartbeat. It's kind of a pulsating and a pendulum rhythm, sometimes going out a bit, and then sometimes there's this pause, this silent transition, and nobody knows where it comes from. It seems to happen from itself. And the children, when they are in deep play, they would not even notice me entering. That's when I know things go well. You know, they see me, but they look right through me as if I'm not there, because they are in their own world. Their world of imagination and their world of dream. And even the educator, maybe I have to look where he or she is at work. But then when I follow this pulsating rhythm, I would be able to find where this heartbeat is taking place. And there this educator is at work, maybe even not noticing, I would hope, that I'm entering, because she's so devoted, or he is so devoted with what he or she is doing, that my entering is kind of taken with the rest. So I become part of the environment. I become part of the setting. And it is very interesting, because when you see this early childhood educator at work, you would think, how is she keeping, or how is he keeping all these children together? It seems like her attention or his attention is only there in the work. And yet, when you look carefully, you see it's like the ripples when you throw a pebble into the pond, it ripples. So there is a connection. So that's how I would try to feel and sense that things are going well.
Sounds good.
Oh, it does.
Sounds good.
It
Sounds
is.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, because they say that, you know, the worlds of kindergarten and early childhood and the lower school and the upper school are so different. So, Christoph, when you would enter, let's say, class 5, how would you know that things are going well? What would you see and feel and hear there?
Yeah, it is interesting. It is quite similar to what you said, but also quite different. Similar is this, that if I'm in a class, let's say class 5, then I can experience that the class teacher teaches his class. He is not talking to the individual children, but every child in that class feels as if he or she just talks to him. That's very mysterious. He is there with them. The children feel he is with me, but he does not talk to the individual child. That's one thing. Another thing you could observe is that he does not work in the way that he forced the children to understand what he says. There's a wonderful quote by Steiner where he said that what the teacher brings to the children that is not totally understood, but if he has brought it with the energy of his soul, then the children will understand that 20 years later, or 30 years later. And from this mechanism, Steiner said, it is one of the most wonderful benefits of education, this late understanding. And if you ask me how I see that things work well in a class, then I see things work well if the class is able to balance itself and is not depending from the teacher. He could easily go out for a cup of coffee, and when he comes back, the class is just working. That's what I mean with balancing out. Yeah, it is like this. And that you feel that it sounds a little bit sentimental, but you feel that his soul is with the children. Something like that. But Clara,
yeah,
we see there are some similarities, there are differences, but what are now the conditions that an early childhood educator can achieve this quality?
Well, I think all of us know that when another quote of Steiner, when he says all education in reality is self-education, then that is the core of what we can do to create such a world, such a timelessness in our early childhood settings, by first working on ourselves. And yesterday we saw a beautiful image, how these 7 arts are working from 2 directions. And in the middle, the musicality was put. And I think this musicality is kind of the crux or the central point. If you ask me, what can an early childhood educator do so that this timelessness quality of eternity, or you could say of continuous presence or present, arises in the early childhood setting, then it's this inner tuning of the early childhood educator. Klaus Peter yesterday gave an image of putting your coat, on the hook outside of the kindergarten before entering. And I think all of us know that we are surrounded by realities. Even when we don't hear or listen to the news, which we better should, we all know how devastating sometimes the images we get from what's happening in the world affect this inner tuning. But then there is a time before you come into the kindergarten, when you come from home and you have a quiet stretch, even when you have to go through traffic, but this quiet stretch from the gate or the door of the kindergarten or early childhood setting until you're in, or this moment before the children enter. And there you can retune your inner world. Often we say the world resonates in us, and it is true. But this musicality, this middle point, is exactly this point where we can reshape and recreate this inner music and resonate it into the room so that when the children enter in our social space that we create, are not finding the agitation in us, are not finding the despair of the world in us. But as an image, you could say, create some mood of summer meadow, full of flowers, full of growth, full of bumblebees and butterflies. So by tuning, you have then the instrument, I think, to really sculpt the time flow in which you then take the children through the day.
Sounds good, huh? Sounds good, yeah. Listen, in this wonderful Oxford cycle, Steiner said this to the early childhood people and to the teachers. He said, the children that come to us, they move from a state of heredity into the state of world being. And we have to cover that transition. Now, we heard yesterday also something about the wall. The wall around the fortress, the castle of the kindergarten or the Waldorf schools. And we can understand that very well because she said at the same moment, yes, the children need protection. You know, this image of the wall is by Steiner. And we have a question. Is that image even today a right image? For example, house with the parents.
Yes. I think if we talk about this tension field, inner freedom, social responsibility, in our relation with the parents, I think we become very to the point of how that feels, the tension field. If we make this wall, and I must confess, me, myself too, out of the best intentions for the child, we want to create an ideal world. And we want to create that ideal world like a wall around the child. But what we often are not realizing is that the parents are standing on that other side of the wall. And what they are feeling...
Can you repeat it?
What we often do not realize is that the parents are standing on the other side of the wall. And that is what they are experiencing. They see that we're protecting the children, but they feel that they are not part of that protection. So I think this wall can only work as a wall if parents are part of that wall. And I would say even that today, this wall should be more like a breathing skin, a membrane that filters influences that we think are harmful for this beautiful growth and overcoming of heredity, you know, this socialization process of the child. And that this filtering is like a breathing, you can see it. It's again this breathing gesture from in and out. And I think for the early childhood educator, but you can say how it is for the grade school later, but for the early childhood educator, it's especially attention field, because both want to protect the child. The parents do, and the early childhood educator do. But the early childhood educator creates an ideal world, out of time, out of space. A little paradise, a Garden of Eden. And the parent comes in the morning, and the parents with the child finds him or herself in the midst of reality, in the midst of the challenges of life. The traffic, the breakups in the marriage, the losing of the job, the crisis, all of that. So we're having a meeting of worlds here. So this is an incredible field of tension, and we need to learn a breathing gesture. And if I may, I think there's one gesture that can help us. I don't know if it was yesterday here or at the preparation meeting, but in our council meeting, one of our council members, Sylvia Jensen, brought the image of the pearl. And you will hear her on Thursday with Florian. But the image of the pearl, when she talked about it, how the pearl is formed, you know, wrapping itself around an alien object, an alien element, I think this is a real gesture what the etheric also does. You know, when they cannot get rid of something that is harmful, the body encapsulates it, integrates it, makes it part of the whole, and therefore it becomes less harmful. When you isolate it, then it becomes a problem, a real problem. So I have no solutions, but I think we can find maybe some answers in looking at both that breathing gesture and that encapsulating and integrating quality of the etheric. But how is that in the lower school?
I do not know. I have no idea. But what I know is this, that again, in this Oxford lecture, Steiner said, our main drive is the love for the children. But you always understand in the words of spiritual science that when Steiner speaks about the love for the children, he means that we have the energy to understand them, that we have, that we find a path to learn the psychology of the becoming human being. That is what he meant with love. And when he stated that, he said, if that awakes in you this love for the children, you will be only successful if in the same moment a huge love arises in you for the world. And that is for me the answer about this wall question. Of course, we need a certain protection, but it is so absolutely important that every child, every parent feels that we are part of our society, that we stand in this world, that we know this world, and that we know what happens in this world. There are major rejections against the Waldorf education and the early childhood if indeed it isolates itself. Yeah, that's that. And I would like to add a little bit. That is this. If you look at if you look at the human being, then I would like to say something. We depend from our relation with above. For sure, from there we get our inspiration. And everyone has to find his way to these moments of inspiration. Steiner gave endless suggestions for that. And then we have to realize them. So that is a top-down gesture. We all, as human beings, depend from it. There's nothing new. Everyone knows that. There's a second gesture, that is the incoming gesture. How we receive the world, we digest the world, and if we have digested that, we put our actions into the world. So we have this double stream. We stand between heaven and earth, and that is what you said. We breathe, we have, how you said that, a membrane?
A membrane.
Between the world and ourselves. And this world love is something, I guess, something of a future task that we do that we engage that more. And that brings us to the question of, yeah, can we understand the time in which we live, right? If I ask you, Clara, sorry to ask, it's not an examination. If I ask you what is the consciousness soul, what you would say?
It is an examination, I think. He always does this. Well, I think we are all having first experiences of it. And we are all experiencing how much we still need to develop. But when you would ask me what it is for me, so I'm answering for myself now, what it is trying to find the middle between connecting from my feeling side, yes, how I get an insight from that, kind of not connecting, but looking objectively from my thinking, yes, seeing how it looks from there, and then in between trying to find something that speaks from what I'm trying to understand. Not from my own inner pictures, but trying to open that inner space by mastering both what lives already there in feeling and thinking, and open a space so that what wants to reveal itself from the other human being, or from the situation, or from the phenomena, can speak to me. And therefore arises a new inner world, a new understanding in myself.
Yeah.
That for me.
Okay.
But how is it for you, Christoph?
Now, that is a problem. That's a real problem. If I look into the world and I try to love the world, no doubt. But if I look into the world in this moment, I see also in our schools, I see an enormous drive for polarization, enormous energy to have polarized ideas. You are a real Waldorf, you are not a real. You are old-fashioned, I'm the new one. Polarization. And if you look around in the social world around you, you see it also. And out of that polarization comes a fragmentation. Initiatives fall apart. Look at what happens in the world now with the environment, with the Paris Treaty. Yeah? It falls apart. And out of that fragmentation, you get disintegration. Polarization, fragmentation, disintegration. And I guess the consciousness soul is a soul that brings these three together. That brings these three qualities again together. That the polarization becomes the unifying energy that comes out of the study of spiritual science. And that the fragmentation, the opposite of the fragmentation is that we find imaginations, that we find a star that guides us through our task and our future. And if you look at the disintegration, I always ask myself why Steiner had this fantastic invention of the faculty meeting. In the early childhood setting, you have that also, that you meet, that you work together, that you have shared concepts. So if you want to achieve that, I guess that is a quality of the consciousness soul. But it's too short to say, achieve that. You need something in between. Can you say something about that in between? I know she can. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask her. Tell us about that in between.
Well, I think Christoph mentioned the key word, and that is this imagination. You know, but how to do that? Because our perceptions are drawn by the world in, as Christoph said and illustrated, by things that are not having this unified working together, which could be the result of a consciousness soul. But Steiner has not left us only with problems, luckily. He left us with ways that show some possibilities to develop. And in one of his books, Knowledge of Higher World, he brings several ways, several pathways to develop a new way of thinking. And one of them, he particularly puts some interest and some focus on. And that's what he calls the development of what he calls the heart chakra, or the 12th petal lotus flower. And it seems like the image itself is already grand, but he gives very practical, very basic exercises to do that. And the first one starts with an exercise to take mastership or control back on the way we think. And he gives a very little exercise. He says, try to take 5 minutes a day to start with, to really focus your thinking on a very simple daily object. Nothing grand, something as simple as a pencil or a paperclip or a spoon. And then try to develop thoughts that only have to do with this very simple object. How it looks, how it's composed, how it was invented, what the use of it is, all kinds of thinking that are only concentrated, focused, controlled to this object. Now you might think this is very easy to do. I suggest, if you haven't tried it, try it. And you will see how many visitors are coming in your thinking, trying to get you away from this little object. Yes? Oh, my husband has, oh, I have to, oh, yes? So, this focusing of thought, yes, is one of the first exercises he gives to take mastership. Now, why does he give that? The focused line that he is suggesting by this exercise is really helping us to find this middle path, to exercise thinking that is focused and coherent, that is not taking us like the day goes in all directions, but it is giving us a certain line. And if we practice that, he said, we will eventually have the capacity of developing some objectivity in our thinking.
Nee, neem dat dikke kreet.
Ga je dat doen?
Een dikke kreet, dat is heel goed.
Ah, oké. So that's the first one. And you might think, how can this help me in the early childhood work? How can this help me? Well, I think this focused thinking that leads to objectivity can help you if we try to build the image of the child, if we try to build the image of the parent, and we don't let all other thoughts, all other perceptions come into that, but we really try to think from the object, from the focused attention. And then we can hope to overcome all this sympathy and antipathy that is arising in us and finding an objective thought. The second exercise he gives us is to take mastership of our actions, of our will. And again, a very simple, basic exercise. It's not a meditation, it is an exercise to prepare this inner work. He says, try in the morning, before you set out on the day, to find 1 or 2 moments in the day where you decide what you will do at that exact time. Let's say, 11:45, I will pull my nose. Nothing grand, nothing, oh, I have to anyhow, clean, so I'll do this and integrate it. No. Something that is totally not useful. Something that you decide on a free will, yes? And later in the day, let's say 6:25, I will put my left hand on my right shoulder. No one is asking you to do that. There is no usefulness in that, not at all. But it helps you to take control of this time stream again. You all know that when we go in the day, we are taken by life and by what is asked and expected of us. So he gives us now the exercise, try to find 2 moments in the day where you step out of this time stream that is taking you and you make a free deed. As small as that. And if you exercise that, then out of that, you will be able to develop also a free deed in your work. Not what is asked, but a free action. You are able to compose when you feel it's needed to do something else than what is expected. You have created this inner force that you can do that. You are the master of your time then. Shall I continue?
I hope.
Next one. Take control of, and I should actually write, but I'll say it so I don't have to write it, expression of feeling. What he means there is not to become like, robots or automatons. No, he wants us to have a rich inner life, but what he asks us to do is to learn to control the extremities of it. Yes? So if you as a person are very expressive, yes, and you're very easily taken into joy or sadness or whatever grand emotion, then he asks you to try in your expression to hold it a little back, not totally go with it, but hold it a little back. And it's a double exercise, to look for those moments in the day when a feeling might be just subtle, like a wind passing by. And if you're not careful, you have not noticed it. And to try to grasp these subtle feelings and consciously enlarge them, let them grow, water them, put some sunshine on them. Yes? If we try to develop this mastership, yes, he says, the quality that arises out of that is one of equanimity. And I think we all have lots of practice during the day. Our colleagues who are not doing things like we think they should do it give us a lot of opportunity to exercise. Yes? And we also have it with the parents and with our own personal lives. We easily find ourselves, there we go again. Yes, our horses are going. And we have to now try to rein them, become riders of that. And learn to gallop them when they're a little bit shy standing in the stable. Give them some hay, spur them a little bit. So we're really trying. And this will also help us to become more observative of those subtle feelings that are with us when we work with the children and when we are with the parents. Yes, to understand how that is going and try to find some equanimity in which we can embrace and accept all that we encounter, not go with it, yes, but embrace it. And then so these three are actually, coming as a control and exercising of taking mastership, that all actually come from the thinking, because we all need to be conscious of having the right time and doing these exercises. So we're really taking each time also our thinking within it. And then he says, there's another one. When we put the thinking into the feeling, the next exercise is the exercise of positivity. And as Christoph said before, the world is really challenging us today in finding positivity. It's easier to go with despair, it's easier to go with hatred, and it's easier to go with, not longer believing in the possibility of change than it is to develop positivity. And you probably know this example that Steiner gave. He gave this example of Christ walking with his disciples on the road, and there was a dead dog that had been lying there for a long time, kind of already deteriorating. And the disciples were going in a big bow around it, but then they saw that he was standing there looking at it. And they came, and the only thing he said was, "Look how beautiful those teeth are." I think this image can be so telling, to really try to look through all the despair, all the decay, all that is going not well, and to look for the positivity. A big, big challenge today, I think, given that we are facing such a time of polarization. But if we try to really practice it with the parent that is challenging us, with the colleague that is challenging us, with the children that are teaching us what it means, positivity, yes? Then out of that, the three moral goods, the good, the beauty, and the true, can come to the surface again. They become within our reach again. It becomes tangible. But we have to practice it. And the other one is to putting the thinking into the willing. Here we were going to develop, the free deed in a very basic, practical exercise. And now we have to practice open-mindedness. I think, given these faculty meetings, Christoph, you were talking about, how to do that. Don't we often find ourselves in a meeting when we have to discuss something, and then before our colleague tells us what he or she thinks, we already know what he or she is going to think, and we go like, yeah. Closed. We're not even hearing anymore what the other is saying. We're not, because we are already occupying our mind with all the prejudices, with all the past experiences. And therefore, we are not longer seeing and hearing. And it's the same with how we are with the parents and with the child, each time anew. I once had a little boy, and he had an incredible, difficult biography. Such a biography that life was for him a real challenge. And each day he would come into the kindergarten, not trusting the world at all. He had not been given a reason to trust the world. And he would disrupt. He would go around, disrupt the play of others, make noises, make himself seen and heard, yes? And if I was not careful, I would put his image in the room before he would arrive. And he would meet it. He would meet my expectation of him. And therefore, faithfully, he would make it sure that he would do what I was thinking he was going to do. Yeah? So to clear this open mind, to create the space of new reality. Yes? If we practice that, then we become receptive. Receptive for what we saw yesterday wants to come from the future as a new possibility. And then the last is not a new one, but it's the cultivating or the practicing of all the before. And we can hope that if we are able to do that, that something of a harmony arises in us and with the world. So these are possibilities given to each one of us, I think, for creating a new relation with ourselves and with the world we encounter. But tell me, Christoph, what are your viewpoints?
Now, I'm very happy that you brought this, because when we look at disintegration, if we look at polarization, fragmentation, then we can ask ourselves why we have now 100 years of a renewed education. What is the time frame in which we are? And a big part of that time frame is indeed that polarization. It is, you find it on all places in the world. And what you brought here is a first, I will not say a first step, but a set of actions to overcome these three not so easy qualities of the polarization, the falling apart, the fragmentation. And that is our time. And why is that now? Why we have now 100 years of Waldorf education? And we both have decided to bring that point. It's not such an easy point, but that is that point, this idea Steiner brought to us, that he said, mankind is entering the threshold. Mankind is coming to the threshold between this world and a spiritual world, or let's say this world and the world of our origin and our ideas, this world. And you know, if you enter that threshold, if you enter that totally unconsciously, then you get a fourth quality, and that's the quality of desorientation. You do not know where to go with this initiative. To have the orientation, what is our aim, what are our attitudes, where we want to go. I just spoke with a colleague from here, from a school in America. They are in so heavy troubles that they are at the end of their existence. They are so far on their end of the existence that the early childhood department and the lower school just not know what to do in the future. And they have already passed the idea how terrible it is for the children to see that everything is falling apart. And these instruments Clara brought now on the blackboard are very powerful instruments to overcome this disintegration, this polarization. And if you look at the title, what we have decided to work on, then you have found in this title that we want to make a connection between the art of life and the art of education. And part of that being on the threshold is that life is becoming, she said it already, extremely complicated, highly demanding. How we handle ourselves. And that's, I guess, what we would like to bring today, that we try to explain that if we do not find a precise handling of ourselves, we will not handle the art of education. That is what she said in the very beginning when she said every education is basically self-education. Now, it's not because I want to put more concepts over your head, but Steiner gave 6 attitudes. They are before this. And these are attitudes to help yourself to maintain your own life. These are the attitudes for the art of living. And it is our understanding that we need this art of living before we enter the art of education. Just in my flatland, not in yours, but in my flatland, there is in this moment a horrible confrontation between the so-called scientists who said, good education is always based on scientific research. So Waldorf is nonsense, because they have this old-fashioned idea that education and early childhood education is an art. They say it into my face. They say, boy, this is absurd, it is nonsense. But we know that it isn't, because the solution of this being on the threshold from the educational part is this art, education as an art, as a pulsating engagement between me and our children. But before we do that, we need to find ourselves, that we have our home. I give you another nice quote by Steiner. He said, the task of early childhood education and grade school education, not high school. The task of early childhood education and grade school education is to get the children so healthy that when they are in life, their body is not an obstructing element for their spiritual goals. I repeat it. All what we do is about health in early childhood and in the grade schools. To become so healthy that the body, when we are grown-ups, is not against our innermost striving that is given through our biography. So the 7 attitudes before this mighty instrument is this. Look at the polarity of your health and responsibility. Look how there is always tension between responsibility and health. You know, there are always teachers who said, it's too much for me. And you know, there are always teachers, for them is nothing too much. And they are always healthy. That is so fascinating. Look at this polarity. Health versus responsibility. Then the second is this. We are always in a group. We are never, ever alone. So if you make a decision for yourself, it's always necessary to make decisions for yourself, but also think about what you decide for yourself, what are the side effects for the social group in which you are. I leave the class. Okay, I have reasons for it. But what that means for these children and these parents? We are never alone. We are always in a social surrounding. We are always in a community. The human being is a community being. And then this one, thoughts and feelings are realities. That is the threshold thought. The old thought is, I can think and feel what I want, no one will harm me. On the threshold, we will say, my thoughts and my feelings, they matter. even if I don't talk about them. But what I think about the other, what I feel about the other, it matters, even if I keep my mouth. And then the next step is that the true human being is on the inside, not on the outside. The true human being is on the inside, not on the outside. And the next step is stay firm to your decisions. And then the last one, she spoke so wonderfully about that, is a deep thankfulness that you are here, that we are here together, that we are on earth. A thankfulness towards everything what happens to you. These were 6. And the 7th is typical Steiner, that he said, the 7th attitude is try always to have this 6 in mind. Typical Steiner. That is this. Have this all in mind. And then we have an armor. Then we have a weaponry to meet the abyss, to meet the threshold. It is threshold time. Right?
Absolutely.
Now, we come back on this idea that the human being is just in this cross. This is the world. This is above, below. And do you want to add something to it, or shall we go to the next?
No, I think you brought a beautiful inner picture behind this star weaving. So I think we can continue.
Then we continue. Then we put this a little bit aside.
Which way? Here?
So one of the elements of the consciousness soul is that, and we all experience that, is that we, on the one hand, become very individual. All in education today is about individualization. But on the other hand, on the other side, we have developed now, the last 100 years, a feeling for what is mankind. Mankind. And we would like to end with an image that shows us mankind. That is an image that was designed by this great initiate of the 20th century, this great initiate of the 20th century, Rudolf Steiner. He created that image and called it, give it a name. It is the representative of man. He is mankind, and at the same time, we are all in that individually also. And this is this image. So you see there the representative of man indeed balancing above and below. But not only that, if you look careful, he's not only balancing the above and below, but he's also walking. Walking means going from the past to the future. Walking means he is related with the world. He takes the world in, he takes the world out. And this representative of man is able, and that's our task on the threshold, to become able to balance the forces of above and below to create freedom in the middle sphere. That's our sphere. And that's at the same time the aim of all education, that we can stand in that middle sphere. And I guess we will end that with a poem, right?
Yes. We want to end with a poem, and just for the translators, Christoph say it in German first, and then I will make a free English translation.
Weisheit erleuchte uns. Liebe durchglühe uns. Kraft durchdringe uns. Dass in uns erstehe, Helfer der Menschheit und Diener der heiligen Sache, selbstlos und treu.
Wisdom, enlighten us. Love, warm us. Strength, permeate us, so that in us may arise helpers of humanity and servants of the holy cause, selfless and true.